What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics Show. We are live here, as always, on the DSM-Media Philadelphia YouTube and Twitter channels. Guys, do yourself a favor. Do us a favor. Make sure to check us out on Twitter at DSM_media. Hit that follow button, and then check out the link tree in our bio. Make sure to check out the YouTube link specifically, as you can see on the screen right here. It is the best and only spot to get your thoughts, comments, and questions pulled up here with us. I'm one half your host, Dylan Davis. To my right, my faithful co-host, Scotty. The best weekend is coming up upon us, man. Selection Sunday took place last night. We got our brackets in. We're doing our bracket challenge, so I'll drop the link in the comments during the show, after the show, whatever, to get you guys all involved. $10 buy-in for the DSM Media bracket challenge to go against Scotty, myself, and a bunch of other people. But we're going to do our best to break down this fun, exciting bracket. See where we land on this first weekend, Scotty. See some matchups we want to see, maybe in the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, National Championship, etc. See who we got winning it all. The Eagles continue to make moves within the margins, stacking up draft picks, opening up cap space. Uche comes over. Great. What was that? 2022 with New England. Obviously had a fall off year after that. And then in Kansas City, never really got his footing. But Josh Uche is here now. So we're going to talk about what the Birds have been doing. Phillies opening day, 10 days away. As the week goes on, we'll continue to talk about the fight-ins. But my man, happy Monday nonetheless. And what is going on?
Happy Monday. Hell of a weekend. Obviously, you mentioned we're going to talk about the NCAA tournament. Selection Sunday was yesterday. Get into all of that madness. But the madness did start over the weekend, man, which was pretty fun to get into, pretty fun to watch. Didn't start great midway through last week for us, man. We were having a little bit of a slump there, betting wise. It just felt like, honestly, bro, and maybe I don't want to speak for you, but we were texting the whole time, man. Yeah. It just felt like as soon as one thing goes our way, then the next thing, it was like St. John's over the weekend, for example. I picked them in the Big East championship, right? Yes. I had St. John's, and I had them to cover the spread, and I had St. John's money line first half, though, right? It was a little parlay built up, right? Yeah. St. John's money line first half. Of course, they don't get the money line first half, but then they go on to beat the team by double digits in the second half. They explode, and that just seemed to be happening. Whether it was first half explode and you have money line second half or vice versa, it just seemed to be happening all last week.
Totals were all over the place. I was texting you, and I literally
first half totals miss, and then the second half explodes.
Right. But if you have the game total instead of the first half total, the first half they'll combine for 86 and then combine for 52 in the second half. So the game total doesn't
exactly
hit, the first half cruised. It was very frustrating, and it really pissed me off for this upcoming week, because I'm like, these goddamn college kids, man, whether it's at the free throw line, whether it's late in game situations. I mean, I didn't even text you guys about this, but Saturday, the first game on Saturday, I believe it was the Norfolk State conference championship. I had the over, which was like 140 and a half. It was 65-63. I forget exactly who they were playing, but the team tied it with 10 seconds left. Didn't realize they tied the game and fouled immediately off the inbound.
No, you didn't tell me about this.
And Norfolk State hit a free throw and won by 1 instead of going to overtime. It obviously ended at 131. I would have needed like 9 points in overtime or whatever. But that's what I mean. Like, it took away from how special this week is. Yeah. And then we got back on a winning track yesterday, and then Selection Sunday hits, and it's like I'm balled all the way back in. I mean, we're firing off brackets. I'm printing out brackets.
Yeah. Because to your point, brother, on Saturday night, man, right, and the same thing happened with Duke again, because it was like first half. I think Duke was down to Louisville in that ACC championship. I had like their first half spread, I think 3.5, something like that. The second half, they come out and just take over and win by double digits, right? But
well, I mean, I doubled down. Friday night.
I doubled down in that game, and I laid Duke money line at halftime. And mind you, they were giving Duke -1.5 at plus money, so I took that. But it happened in the Friday game of the ACC as well.
I mean, they were up by 21, 24 points.
That one went in reverse. Up 21 in the first half. but end up not covering at halftime, right, or something like that.
No, they covered at halftime, I believe, but
they didn't cover for the game.
Not at all. No, UNC
They ended
came
up
all
only
the way
winning
back,
by
and then
like
obviously, speaking of those college kids making mental mistakes and having mental lapses,
Yeah.
Withers, for whatever reason, decides to try to basically like draw Duke off. So I don't know what his thinking was. He didn't have confidence in a shooter. He was trying to get Duke to have a lane violation, give him another chance.
God bless that man.
Loses the shot. They lose the free throw that he ended up making, which would have tied the game. And that's how UNC season should have come to an end. But I guess that's a good way to kick off what took place last night. UNC finds their way into the tournament. Now, I do want to say
Magical.
I do want to say this. I'm not even like that upset about it. Like, I think people are paying way too much attention to a first four game, right? However, what it really comes down to is what is the point of the committee? What is the point of the metrics that they use? What is the point of the analytics and the statistics that they put into this thing, right?
Yeah.
Because people keep focusing on Indiana, and Indiana, a very good case, okay? West Virginia. I read something last night, Scotty, that there's, I think, 111 people or 111 brackets made that go into this thing, right? Like these bracketologists make their brackets, and that's kind of how these things are determined, right? Over averages and stuff. Do you want to take a guess at how many brackets West Virginia was on out of 111?
How many?
111. They were on every single person's bracket, and they didn't make the tournament. So I think there is a point to be made. Like, you guys are putting a little too much care and stock into a team making the first four over another team, right?
Yeah.
But it goes strictly to
by their own logic.
What is the point of these things, right? What is the point of the quad, of valuing all these quad 1 wins? And Carolina has a quad 3 loss. What is the point? And then
I saw this in the reasoning behind UNC. They're 1-12 in quad 1.
Yes.
To your point, have a quad 3 loss, but they're 8-0 in quad 2 games.
Nice. Well, and then it also comes down to the fact that somehow their current sitting athletic director is on the committee. How does that, I don't know. We're going down like a side path.
Let me ask you this, and maybe you know, because I don't know. Who would have been the team that West Virginia would have replaced? Would it have been UNC? They were the...
Oh, yeah.
They were the last team?
Yeah. It would have been fighting for that 11 spot. Now, obviously, Xavier gets in, well-deserved. Texas, whatever. San Diego State was a team that was one of those last four in, which is fine. It was basically a combination of Xavier, UNC, West Virginia, Indiana. And I think 98% of people believed or thought that UNC is the odd team out there. And maybe one of Indiana or West Virginia gets screwed, but for the other one that has a case. And they don't. And so when I saw that West Virginia was on every single person's bracket, I think UNC was on like 38 of 111 or something like that. I mean, it's a bad look. Let's just say that. The AD is on the committee, but he left the room. He went to take a piss when they were discussing UNC.
Yeah.
Like, as if they're not all friends anyway. Like, hey, guys, wink, wink. I'm going to get out of here so I don't interfere. Yeah. But you know me, right? Well, you know where I wear what I want.
I do get it from a ratings standpoint. Like, it's just better for UNC to be in the tournament than not for the NCAA as a whole. Like, I do get that. I think it's just the whole charades that we play leading up to Selection Sunday. Yeah. Like, to your point, like, just be transparent from the jump that UNC is getting in no matter what. And nobody's going to complain come today that they got in no matter what. Because the thought, everything that was running through that ACC tournament was get that win against Duke, and they're in. They didn't get the win. They actually got blown out in the first half, and then they get, like, participation points for catching up in the second half. And then it just kind of goes under the radar through Saturday, and then all of a sudden Sunday, boom, they're in.
It just feels like
it just didn't make sense.
It feels like a namesake, like it's North Carolina, Tar Heels. They're going to get in, right?
And it is.
For sure,
It is.
for sure.
But
And
that
then
is
again,
what it is.
this is where gambling and Vegas comes into play, and it just makes you pissed off
Yeah.
when you're talking in the hands of committees or judges and stuff like that. Because when you are allowed to bet on futures and you're, the closing odds, literally like 10 minutes before Selection Sunday took place, North Carolina to make the tournament, yes, was plus 425. Indiana and West Virginia were minus like 200, 300, whatever.
That's insane.
And that's the team that gets in, right? And
that's
so
insane.
It made me think
decision that's not made scientifically. It's not made by the numbers, to your point.
Correct. I'll give you like a close analogy, right? 2 weeks ago, I don't know if I think I texted you about this, but 2 weeks ago I was betting on the UFC, having some drinks. And it's like, the UFC's
very difficult me about this.
Brother,
I got hit with the same shit. Yeah.
But this is where like Vegas and having like these sports books as like part of the promotion and everything come into play. And like you said, it's not scientific. It's based on a committee. It's based on these judges in this instance.
A judgment.
I had a plus 200 underdog on the money line. It was like the third fight of the prelims. He whoops this dude's ass. Like first round, back and forth, not too much action. End of the first round, my underdog almost knocks this dude out and almost finishes the fight, right? The bell ends him on the ground and pound attack, right?
Yeah.
Second round, a little bit of back and forth. End of the second round, my guy shoots, gets a takedown, has all the time on the ground in the last minute and a half of the second round, going into the third round. With 4 minutes left in the fight, they showed the live odds brought to you by DraftKings on ESPN Plus on the broadcast. My plus 200 underdog was minus 680 on the money line. I went from plus 200 to minus 680. Scotty, he went on to shoot and get another takedown in the third round and win the third round. It went to the judges' scorecards, and it was a split decision. They gave it to the other dude. That's like when it has nothing to do with the product, when it has to do with other human beings deciding what happens, that's where these things start to become a little bit fishy. Now, with that said, let's get into the bracket itself because, funny enough, I think the Tar Heels win 2 games. funny enough, I think they win tomorrow night against San Diego State, in which I think will be a good game. San Diego State's defense is very, very good. They're one of the best scoring defenses in the nation. I think UNC gets by them. I think they get the 6-11 matchup. Ole Miss can score. I think they beat Ole Miss. And then I think that's where their journey ends. I think their journey will end on Saturday at the hands of Iowa State. But I do think all this hoopla, all these people pissed off, right? I think that North Carolina wins 2 games, and maybe that's very asinine of me. I think that happened last year where West Virginia was the ACC team that got in at an 11 seed. They played, maybe it was Norfolk State. They played somebody from the Mountain West. Colorado State, excuse me, that's who it was. And Colorado State absolutely dog-walked Virginia last year. So I know there are a lot of people saying, didn't we learn our lesson, right? When the shitty ACC team gets in, when maybe they shouldn't have. But yeah, I think starting up in the South bracket, just to piggyback off of the UNC conversation, I do think that they'll get 2 wins, man.
Yeah, it is interesting when you put it that way. To your point, I'm just looking for the matchup because I'm pretty sure I did the same thing here. I like to double check myself though, because I do make hate picks, if that makes sense. So
it works. 100% works.
I make hate picks a lot of the time, but no, I actually did. Yeah, I thought so. I was a little confused if the Ole Miss matchup would be in the first round or the second. I did ultimately go. Ole Miss in that round of 64 matchup, but I don't know. I guess if I had to pick out of SDSU and UNC, I would probably go UNC, but I don't know. There is some fraud in that. I just feel like anything that comes out of my mouth, Dylan, I guess what I'm trying to say, I can't be non-biased with UNC. And so in my head, I just have them in as this like fraud. But to that point, just because you lose the Duke 3 times doesn't make you a fraud when you go to play Ole Miss. That's a tough matchup. That is a good
fraudulent against everyone else.
Like
what? Yeah, because I'm essentially ignoring the metrics just like the committee did by saying what I just said.
Yeah, and I think to your point, when you look at matchups, what's one thing UNC can do? They can score. They have a small ball lineup. They like to put up points. They like to get out in transition. RJ Davis is a 7th-year senior or some shit. Like, no, I'm kidding.
They got two guards. They got two guards that can stretch the floor and take over a game for a short period of time.
And that's one thing UNC has is like when they go into these matchups, right? They do have RJ Davis who can give you 25. He can give you 30 in a said matchup, which is something that a lot of these other smaller schools won't have when they're going up against this team. So it is interesting. Ole Miss, I guess, just impressed me. They're in the SEC. Obviously, they play against the tougher comp.
They can light it up too. They can light it up.
They can. But that's a good ass first round matchup, quite honestly.
Yeah, I love. So we said this before, and I know I jumped right into the South bracket because it was just piggybacking off the UNC convo. But I said this to you before the start of the show. I hate how chalky my bracket gets towards the end. And it makes sense, right? Because when we sit here and we talk about Cinderellas and upsets, that's the first weekend. That's the first day 2 of the tournament, whatever. Very rarely. I mean, you'll see it sometimes. 2 years ago, we had FAU and San Diego State as a Final Four game. You'll get those kind of runs. UConn won it years ago as like a 10 or 11 seed. You will get a deeper run by some of these teams, but it will start to flatten out at the end. I just hate where we get to, but I love the South bracket. The West bracket is absolutely loaded, as we talked about. I think Duke, you texted it, they kind of not lucked out, like they deserve this path. But I love Duke's path, especially, knock on wood, a healthy Cooper Flag for this tournament. We'll talk about it. And then I absolutely fucking despise the Midwest bracket.
Yeah.
I don't mind the first weekend of the top half of the bracket. I hate everything about from 6 and below in the Midwest bracket. I think it's disgusting. I think it's ugly. I think 5 out of the 6, if not all 6 of the teams I'm looking at right now, I don't feel comfortable having in a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8 matchup potentially. But, maybe knock on wood, I'll be correct, man. But yeah, I think the Midwest is fucking gross.
Yeah, I do tend to agree with you, man. I was looking at out of all of the the paths to the Final Four, I think the Midwest is just like the grossest in a sense.
I think Houston. Point,
I think the Duke, the east side of the bracket, is the easiest, right? Yeah. Smoothest, and I say that with a little bit of context here. Easiest in context of Duke in matchups. Like when you look at Alabama, for example. Yep.
They
can score.
I'm glad you said that. They're all the same. They're all the same.
They're all the same type of teams.
Arizona's the same.
We blew Arizona out in Arizona. You know what I mean? Like
right.
But
you didn't get put it this way: you didn't get a Michigan State in Duke's bracket. A Clemson type of matchup, right?
I was very happy to not get Michigan State in our bracket. Yeah, on our side of the bracket. That's a great point because Michigan State, not only do they have a great team this year, they're the 2 seed in the South region, right?
Yeah.
Tom Izzo, the pedigree. I don't know, for some reason Duke always
Izzo, brother.
Yeah, Duke always struggles against Michigan State in the tournament. Like I'm good on playing them outside of the Final Four. So yeah, I was glad they didn't end up there. To your point about the Midwest, I'm just looking, and I guess I'm gonna have Clemson in my Sweet 16.
Yep.
But I think that's even ugly, man. Purdue and Clemson, I think that's gross.
Yep.
The first round,
I didn't like Clemson showing in the ACC tournament. I'll tell you that they beat. Oh, my God. Who did they beat before Louisville?
By the skin of their teeth.
Yeah.
Who was it? Was it a buzzer beater against them?
I don't think so, but I had the over. I know that in the Clemson game. It didn't come close to hitting. I swear to God, the game was like 64-58 or something like that. And then they lost to Louisville. Obviously, Louisville goes on to play in the ACC championship game against Duke. I did not like Clemson showing down the stretch, and maybe things change quickly. But I'm not in love with them.
How about the 6-11 matchup in this region though, the Midwest? How do you feel about that?
6-11. Yeah, I think it's gross. I think it's absolutely gross. I don't think Illinois plays a lick of defense.
Who do you have winning and making it into the 11th seed
from the Texas Xavier game? I don't know, man.
I'm leaning Texas just
are you?
from the way they just played in the tournament.
That's true. That's true.
It's tough.
I was going to say I am probably leaning Xavier. I think metric wise, like the whole point of the last four in, right? What they were doing on the bubble and the quad wins, I do think they might have had like the best resume between the teams and over Texas. But I did like Texas beat what? They beat A&M in the
A&M's tough.
The tournament. So yeah, so my point is I think whoever wins on Wednesday night, I think gives Illinois a problem.
A run for the money.
Yeah. And I think the game below that.
To be clear, I had the 11th seed moving on in that part of the bracket.
Okay.
Whether it is Xavier or Texas. I had Texas in mind. But so then you get a Texas or Xavier with Kentucky, in the
potentially. I will say, since we're in this bracket, I had this as well, D-Rab. I don't know if it's one. I think it's one of the more popular upset picks, which I don't love. I don't love being alongside the public here. I think Purdue is always fraudulent. Obviously, made a run last year. Zach Edey, monster. We get all that. They're always fraudulent 99% of the time, and I just don't think they're a good basketball team.
What's the narrative with High Point? Why is it just because they're playing Purdue?
Well, it's a little bit of that. High Point can score. High Point can light it up. Let me see if they have it here. How many points per game they average.
And while you look that up, just something else to think about. Is there any other upset alerts that you would put out there? And we use upset very, we got to be very gracious here with the word upset, right? Because 8 and 9, that's not an upset at the end of the day.
No, not at all. So I do have High Point advancing versus Purdue. That's my biggest upset. That's my lowest seed moving on. Another chalky type of underdog. I had the Drake Bulldogs, which is a team I talked to you about last week, beating Missouri in the first round as an 11 seed. I have, obviously, like I told you, I think UNC wins, and I have them advancing. So that's 2 11s, which I don't love. And then that's it in terms of upset wise for me, which I know is going to be completely wrong. My next lowest seed is a 10 seed, and I have Richard Pitino and the New Mexico Lobos beating Marquette outright. They're plus 3.5 on the spread Friday night, and I'm absolutely smashing it if I can have a successful first day and a half, because I love New Mexico to beat Marquette.
Interesting. So the one that I want to point out here, the one I was looking at, and this is just based on their performance in their conference tournament over the last week, man. They had some close calls, right? They had some very close games, and I'm talking about Memphis, man, because we talked about them last week, bro. And I know both of us kind of like them going into tournament season.
He's hurt. That's the problem.
Yeah. And they came back down to earth in their conference tourney. They did not look good.
I
don't know if I'm locked in on Colorado State just because it's Colorado State, but if there was
on fire.
It's something I've been considering, man. I have Colorado State picked right now. I just don't know if I'm locked in with it.
I do have Memphis
not in love with
one game. I had them beating Colorado State, and I don't love it. I think Colorado State is absolutely on a tear right now offensively. They have kicked the shit out of Utah State, who was first and second at the time of playing them like 3 weeks ago. And then on Friday night in their either conference tournament or championship or semifinal. They beat the shit out of them again. I think I'll say this. I liked the Memphis team a lot, like you and I were talking about. The guard depth, the shooting, the two bigs that do different things in Dane Danger and Musa Cisse. I think they got an awful draw. You get a 12 seed Colorado State that, if you don't have Tyrese Hunter, can give you fits. And if you win, congratulations, you're playing Maryland.
Yeah. Who's balling right now? I know they just had a heartbreaker, but nonetheless.
No, I think I had Memphis one and done. Tyrese Hunter needs to be healthy. He needs to play. And if he is, I think that Memphis-Maryland game will be a lot of fucking fun, and I would love to see the spread on it, because if it's Maryland by too much, I would probably dabble on Memphis, but you have to find a way to get him back on the court and take care of Colorado State first.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But that is one that right now I do have Colorado State picked. I'm gonna think on that one. The Missouri pick that you put out there, the Drake and Missouri, that one's interesting to me because Missouri does have my guy Mark Mitchell. He's a former Blue Devil, but he was beat up at the end of that.
He tore me a new ass not too long ago. I bet against Missouri. This is probably maybe a month-ish ago, a couple weeks ago. I can't remember.
I think I was on the same game, man, because
Scotty, I'm pretty sure he scored 30 plus.
He was
and I remember watching him at Duke, and I'm like, this dude didn't score last year.
He couldn't shoot.
No.
And now he's hitting threes out there in Missouri, when he really gets going. But he was beat up at the end of the tournament for them, at the end of the conference tourney.
Who did they beat? Bama. It was against Bama.
Yeah, I was on that same game, bro, and then it came out. I started seeing more and more about Missouri and how they have this good of a record against quad one teams because they're playing all of these teams down south. They're an interesting squad. So Drake over them is something to keep an eye on, but they are beat up. I'm just looking around the rest of the first round, anything.
D-Rab's taking Vanderbilt over St. Mary's.
I think I have that one as well.
I don't hate it. I have St. Mary's moving on. Some of these games, like the Drake Missouri game, the St. Mary's Vanderbilt game, they're tough because it's a clash of styles, versus battle tested conferences. So both Missouri and Vanderbilt had to have been tested this year resume wise, playing in one of the best conferences we may have seen, right? Whereas St. Mary's and Drake do two things. They're slow-paced, and they shoot the shit out of the ball efficiently. And we talked about this before. When you get into the tournament and the game slows down and you can't get out fast and you're playing against the clock, can you stay patient? Can Missouri stay patient against Drake and beat that defense, right? Same thing here. St. Mary's is going to muck that fucking game up. Can Vanderbilt stay patient? Where St. Mary's plays in a shitty conference. You know what I mean? So it's their style of play works for me, and I think can give a team problems. But these two teams are battle tested in the SEC, where they can definitely take care of business in the first round.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was just reading D-Rab's comment there, but that's what makes the tournament so interesting, especially in those first couple rounds of matchups that you get. But what are some matchups that you're hoping for
later on?
Yeah,
later on.
What are you just praying happens? Because I got a couple here that I'm just dying to see these two teams play against each other. I actually have an interesting one in the first round. It's not that I'm dying to see them play. Yeah. Louisville and Creighton is very interesting to me as an 8 and 9 seed matchup.
And it kicks off the fucking weekend, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That one's straight pick 'em for me. I really don't.
It is, but you know what pisses me off?
But I went Creighton.
The money line is too full. The money line's pissing me off to open, and I hope maybe it gets brought down as the week goes on.
Who are you leaning?
But Louisville. So I'm on Louisville.
Okay.
Which is frustrating because I do like this Creighton team. Just battled St. John's in the Big East Championship. Kalkbrenner, I mean, the dude's fucking 7'5", right? Can take over games. Ashworth is battle tested. If they get hot from 3, they can put up points. Louisville shouldn't be an 8 seed. That's why I'm giving, like, Louisville should have been a 5 or a 6. And
I thought the same. You come number 2 in the ACC.
Yeah. So I think it's a great matchup as an 8-9. I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to bet on it. I think. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I think it's disrespectful to Louisville to have them down at an 8. I saw someone tweet like the screenshot of that game being the 12-15 first game, and it's like, this is such a great way to start the tournament 0-1 game. Like, it just feels like either way you lean, you're going to be wrong. Like if I'm so leaning true. Louisville, I'm going to be wrong. You're leaning
yeah.
Either way
so
I go,
true.
it feels like I lose this game.
Yeah, because it's hard to measure those two teams. They're both coming out of great conference tournaments, coming off great seasons. Obviously, Louisville maybe has the chip on their shoulder, right? I got a fire alarm going on in my background here.
Good. I couldn't tell if that was my house or your house.
Yeah. Let me mute real quick.
You're good. Just make sure your house isn't burning down first.
Nah, just my wife. She can't cook. But no, I'm kidding. Hopefully she's not watching. But yeah. Oh, there it is again.
Alexis.
No, we have a very sensitive alarm. But all right.
Let me No, you're good, bro. It's really not that loud. I mean, I don't know what it's like for you. I could hear it in the background for a second. But speaking of right below that Louisville Creighton game.
Yeah.
Michigan, UC San Diego. Now, the bets, from what I've seen, Michigan's like the number 1 overall bet team to cover the spread at 2.5 to open. But from the initial reaction of this matchup on social media from experts or bracketologists, all I see are those people picking UC San Diego to win and upset Michigan. And I disagree for 2 reasons. Again, I don't like being on the chalky upset. I think everyone and their mother saw that matchup and went, they're going to upset Michigan. No, they're not. And then B, Michigan had that rough stretch. And I remember looking at their schedule at the end of the year. They're turning the ball over like crazy. They're sloppy. And it's like they had to play like Michigan State, Maryland, and someone else. And they're like, they might not win a game the rest of the year. And they went into the Big Ten tournament playing awful basketball. And then they go and win the Big Ten. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just played extremely well in this tournament. Yeah. Battle tested, right?
Yeah.
They had the 2 bigs in Vlad and in Danny Wolf, right? They got to protect the basketball. And UC San Diego is a team that is very good at turning you over and making you pay for it. They're like a 30-win team. Again, the conferences are going to matter here. I remember someone pointing this out on Twitter earlier. I was on it because it was the chalky pick. McNeese was a 12 seed last year, and it was everyone's favorite pick. And McNeese won 30 or 31 games last year, and I took their spread and I took them outright.
Yeah,
they lost by maybe 40.
Yeah,
this feels like that to me. I think Michigan handles UC San Diego.
Yeah, I took Michigan in that matchup as well. I saw the same exact stuff that you saw this weekend from Michigan in the Big Ten tournament. I guess that's another takeaway from this past week, right? Is like, how much do you take from the conference tournaments where maybe you do have teams like a Duke or other teams that are higher seeded? I didn't see much of it this past week in those conference tournaments of like guys sitting out or kind of holding out for the NCAA tournament or the bigger, more important games. I didn't see much of it, but how much do you factor in conference tournament play and getting hot for that tournament in that arena, right? In that setting versus their entire season of work versus, their matchups with quad ones, quad twos. So just like how much does your perception change from a performance in the conference tournament? In Michigan's case, I think it changed dramatically. Yeah. And so to that point, I don't know. I guess over the years I have tended to go against the more popular upset picks as well, to your point. But I don't know. Michigan, it just doesn't feel right to me. But I guess none of them really do when you're looking at them at first, right?
No, yeah.
But
I mean, you look at all, especially from like a gambling.
It's not the one I go to.
And it's just because It's March. Like, from a gambling perspective, man, you see these games a month ago, 2 months ago, there's not a thought process in your head that would tell you, hey, man, you might want to take Yale to beat Texas A&M. Hey, man, you
Right.
might want to take High Point here in this match. Like, you would not think that. And then you get to these moments. It's just simply, it's not even like, well, it is mathematics, but it just happens every year on repeat. It happens. There is going to be a game or 4 on Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
That has the attention of everyone in America, and they're going, oh my God. And someone's going to look very fraudulent, and another team's going to be celebrating, dancing their asses off afterwards. It just happens every year. So you sit here and you want to go chalk, and you go, there is no way this team is beating Iowa. Just started, like, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, well, no, actually, they're going to. So that's the frustrating part of it all. I want to ask you, man.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I think something else that's interesting to your point. Like, I was just looking at that McNeese matchup with Clemson, right?
Yeah.
You start to notice some of these underdogs that get into the tournament regularly, and you start to see the name of their team yearly. So it's interesting from that standpoint as well, like household underdog teams, because I've definitely seen McNeese in the mix.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, that matchup specifically, man, because we just mentioned I don't love Clemson showing in the ACC tourney. And what I just said to you about McNeese, and I think they have a lot of their quarterback. You're not pissed, you know what I mean? Like, you're not pissed off at how last year's 12-5 matchup went for you? Because that's what they were, I believe, at 12-5.
Right.
Maybe it's 7-10. I forget, but I think for some reason I think they were at 12-5 again. And you got embarrassed, and you were one of those chalky favorite underdogs. Same kind of scenario here. And Clemson's one of those teams that's like top 7 or top 8 in these Ken Palm efficiencies where, oh, they could win the national championship because of these numbers historically. And it's like, oh, well, we'll see how that matchup kind of goes. Let me ask you this. I'm just bouncing all over the place.
I am too, so it's all good.
I love it. Bottom half of the bracket. So obviously we talked about the Creighton-Louisville game. It's a great 8-9 matchup. I think the Mississippi State-Baylor matchup is fucking vomit. I hate everything about that game.
Why?
I just don't like either team. And I think whoever does win the game by the skin of their teeth loses by 100 to Duke in the next game.
Fair enough.
So, like, it means nothing to me for that game to win that game. But there are 2 8 seeds in the bottom half of the bracket that I have moving on. Am I being too optimistic about them just winning their first game? Or do either of them have a legitimate chance? Which one has a better chance of upsetting a number 1 early and busting my bracket? UConn or Gonzaga? Because, like, Gonzaga is one of those teams that I feel like, and I have them moving on. And if Juwan Roberts isn't healthy in that game, like, I think that's going to be a fun game.
Yeah.
But then it's like, am I discounting Georgia, who has a lot of upsets this year? They beat Florida not too long ago. I think they beat Kentucky. Like, Georgia has quality wins, played in the battle-tested SEC. Am I discounting Georgia? And reversely, UConn, am I overvaluing and overrating UConn because it's Dan Hurley and it's Caravan and it's like, can Oklahoma?
It's hard not to.
I know.
It's hard not to, man.
Yeah, I had both 8 seeds moving on in this instance.
UConn's having a down season by their standard the last couple of years, of course, but they're going to go home the first weekend. Like that. The first day, your point,
second day, excuse me. It'd be they're the Friday game, but
nonetheless, they're going home. The second day of the tournament. I just don't see that. So I would take UConn over Oklahoma, although I know Oklahoma can give fits. With Georgia, like, I lean Gonzaga, but is it just because it's Gonzaga, right? Like that's where I'm at in my head right now.
They just score so much.
They do, and I do
they actually lead the nation in scoring.
I do think they'll win, and I do think they'll be the better matchup for Houston in the next round. That's why I want them to win.
I will say this: I don't know what you have in the Mississippi State game, and I don't know if you're going Creighton or Louisville. The thing that I'm not loving here, and I know it's 8-9, it's a coin flip. I have all 4 8 seeds advancing, and that's throwing up major
I had
red
Mississippi
flags for me.
State. I had Mississippi State, Louisville, and Creighton is one I went back and forth with,
Yeah, me
which I
too.
think I'm hating on Louisville because Duke just played them, and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
being biased towards them.
See, that's
and
interesting. I
favoring
thought
Creighton.
you would give them like the ACC respect level because you've seen them more or something.
Nah, fraud. Fraud. That's how I feel about the ACC. But I shouldn't, to your point, in order to build Duke's resume up, for them to be the best team, the ACC needs to be half decent. But no, Louisville did impress me. I mean, the one kid, is it Mitchell? I think his last name is.
Yeah. Yeah.
He went all out against Duke, obviously. He was
I love
fire.
Chucky Hepburn, so.
No.
I love
He's due for a bounce back after that performance for sure. But no, the 8 and 9 matchups are always interesting, of course, but
they are. But you just there's no way all 4 8 seeds are winning.
I have 3 of 4 winning. I have Mississippi State. Yeah, I think Creighton is the only one that I picked opposite.
Fucking A. So we're going to be betting different sides of the first game of the tournament, huh?
I mean, maybe not by the time it comes around, man. Like I wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't solidified in that Louisville Creighton game. Really, that was more of a pick 'em. Same thing with Mississippi State and Baylor. I think what I'm trying to say, I could be easily talked out of my decision in those games, if I'm being completely honest.
What do you think of that over
for Louisville and Creighton?
Yeah.
What's it at?
Pulling it up now. My bad. They got all these fucking NIT games on DraftKings. It moved up 2 points since last night, which pisses me off. It was 143.5. It's already 145.5. So I'm not loving that, but it just feels like a game that gets into the 70s, right?
Yeah. Like off the top of my head,
I'm sure that game will be 68-62.
140 to 150s would be the range for me in that game, I would say. I think this is a 7-10 matchup. Where's it at?
Who you got?
Kansas and Arkansas.
Yeah, Bill Self and Cal, dude.
Where are you at with this one, man?
I'm on Kansas. I'm on Kansas. I think Kansas went through like a fraudulent streak where everyone in the country was mocking them. Oh, it's the first time outside the top 25. They can't beat good teams. And then I watched them battle against Houston in Houston and almost win that game. And then have a decent showing this past week. I don't like this Arkansas team. And maybe that's because I've been burned by them a couple times gambling on them. But I think they are far too inconsistent from the field, and I think Kansas will come away with the win.
Who's the big player that Arkansas is getting back? It's slipping my mind right now.
Well, Nelly Davis has been healthy. Let me just. I don't know.
Twitter. Maybe I'm getting them confused with Kentucky.
Let's see. It makes me go over. I don't want to pick Arkansas
because this is another game I went back and forth with, and basically, in my mind, I watched Kansas earlier this season beat Duke, like straight up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know that they can compete at the highest level. Yeah. Like they have the talent in house to do it. With Arkansas, it's just Calipari. It's the pedigree. It's the surprise factor of like a 10 seed. Like this looks like a good opportunity here.
What pisses me off with Cal is I'm betting against him in this spot, and this is probably a spot he thrives in.
Right.
But let's not act like Kentucky-led John Calipari teams do not have some of the biggest flops and big. Last year, his goodbye, Jack Golke and Oakland waved goodbye to them on the opening weekend, on the first day of the tournament or second day of the tournament. That's what happened on his way out. And you have a way less experienced Arkansas team. And I know they got the transfer portal. They got the big from Tennessee last year. That's their starting center. Nelly Davis John L. Davis from FAU's there who played in the Final Four a couple years ago. So they have guys and they can score. But they're so inconsistent, man.
They are inconsistent.
In tournament play, they were inconsistent. I don't love it. So, Kansas, I think, just over a week ago, beat Arizona, which was a big win for them. Lost to Arizona in the tournament the other night, but played a good game, I believe.
Who would be the bigger second round coaching matchup? Bill Self and Rick Pitino, or
Ooh.
John Calipari and Rick Pitino?
I think for some reason, and I don't know why, because Bill Self is one of the most winningest college basketball coaches of all time. And I think Kansas has made the tournament for like I think every year he's been there. But I feel like Cal's name holds a little bit more weight.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Calipari Pitino is better than Self Pitino. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It is. That's why I asked.
Very fun part of the bracket. Like I said, man, the West is fucking loaded. Absolutely loaded. You have the bottom half with those coaches and those teams. You got Texas Tech as the 3 seed. You got a Drake Missouri matchup that whether you're like me and you like Drake as the underdog or Missouri in the SEC comes out. You got Maryland, Memphis, that UConn team at Danny Hurley, and then you got Florida as the one who I have going very far, and I'll say before we wrap up the show, but I love the West. Let me ask you, and I know I mentioned this to you in the beginning part of the show and before the show. The bottom part of the Midwest. Who do you have? Did you say you have Kentucky or Tennessee in your Sweet 16 and Elite 8? Well, Elite 8, I should say.
Sweet 16. Yeah, so Kentucky, Tennessee. I ended up taking Tennessee in that matchup in the Sweet 16.
Okay.
So I do have Tennessee and Houston in the.
I took Kentucky because I just didn't want.
You didn't want chalk.
All like that.
Yeah,
but I hate it, man. I hate it, and like part of me wanted to take UCLA over Tennessee, and I have UCLA winning the first day, and now I'm not so sure they're going to win the first day. Because here's what I know, right? And I'm not trying to I'm not some college.
They play Utah State. That was one I was looking hard at. But
Utah State, who if you don't know this, run strictly a zone.
Interesting.
UCLA does not shoot the 3-ball well.
Interesting.
So what are you going to do to win that ball game?
Yeah.
That's the question. So I have them winning, and then I sit here and I look at that matchup and I look at that defensive zone and I go, I don't know now.
Yeah.
Because I did just watch Utah State get dog walked by Colorado State back-to-back times against them and in the conference tourney. So
but Colorado State can score. Can they shoot?
Right.
That's a big factor in that, right? Like, so yeah, to your point, that's interesting, man. Because that was a matchup I was looking at. Let me just go back because I feel like I went against that one because I was just like, man, I can't be taking all these 10s. Yeah, because I went with Arkansas over Kansas, and then I had Vanderbilt over St. Mary's.
Okay.
I did go Marquette over New Mexico, but I was looking at New Mexico too, man, and I'm just 7-10. That might be one of the harder matchups across the board.
It is.
Yeah, but I went basically 2 out of 4 10 seeds.
Can I tell you my biggest upset of the entire tournament, more than likely? Like, more so than High Point beating Purdue, like a 13 beating a 4? Yeah. And a team I have going far into it, which the last time I watched them play lost me money and was absolutely disgusting. But you're luckily not in that bracket, and your bottom part of the bracket doesn't play a lot of defense. And I saw D-Rab's comments earlier going against them potentially on day 1, which would really put a damper on my weekend. Yeah. I have the BYU Cougars going against Duke in the Elite 8. I have them beating Alabama in the Sweet 16.
Interesting.
I think that Bama's lack of defense is going to catch up to them, and I know that Bama could score 97 against BYU, but BYU might score 98. And outside of, like I said, that game in the conference tournament against Houston, because you just there's no defenses, there's no size like Houston has. Okay.
Yeah.
I've watched BYU consistently light it up against other great teams all year long. I've seen them beat Iowa State twice. It just feels like every matchup they're like they're underdogs in. They're 6.5, 5.5 point underdogs.
Yeah.
They win the game.
That's interesting, man. Obviously, Bama, they just did not look good. I guess they looked all right the first couple days of the SEC tournament, and then the injuries started to kick in. The lack of depth started to kick in. The lack of defense started to kick in, especially against a team like Florida. But they're definitely a team that could be beaten, and I think that's my point when I say like the East bracket or the East region of the bracket feels good. Feels good as a Duke fan to be in that part of the bracket just because of matchups. Like Bama, it's like, like they could put up a 90, they could put up 100, like you said. But I guess that's what it comes down to. At the end of the day in the tournament, I would rather play a high-powered offense than a high-powered defense at the end of the day.
Let me read you these notable results from BYU going back to the start of the new year, okay?
Yeah.
They have 3 losses in what I'm about to read you. And 2 of them are to Houston. In both losses, in January they scored 55. And then in the big in the tournament game over the weekend, they scored 54. Houston is their kryptonite. They shrink against that toughness and that size and that defense.
Houston defends.
Their other losses to Arizona in February, 85-74. Here are their wins. Baylor, they scored 93. Kansas, they beat 91-57. Arizona, at Arizona, 96-95. At Iowa State on March 4th, 88-85. Iowa State in the tournament, 96-92. They score in the 90s. They shoot the fucking shit out of the ball. And unless you are the Houston Cougars, this team does not shrink offensively.
It's interesting.
I think they make a run. The funniest part, though, is I don't absolutely despise D-Rab's point. I think VCU is a difficult matchup on day one.
Yeah, because that's another one of those pedigree teams, right? Yeah. When you talk about underdog,
Max Shulga was the player of the year in their conference.
Yeah.
Joe, what is it? Oh, Bama Seal. Like they shoot the 3-ball well. They defend. They're one of the better scoring defenses. But their conference stinks, and look, they play good defense. You're not Houston, so I don't think BYU is going to shrink at the sight of VCU's defense, and I think they'll score either in the high 70s or low 80s in this one. It'll be a slowerish pace, so they're not. I don't think they're going to score in the 90s on day one. But yeah, I think they get past. Then they get Wisconsin, which is a tough draw, 6 versus 3. They're going to be an underdog there. I think they get by them. They get by Bama.
I did take them over. I took them over Wisconsin myself. So I do have BYU and Alabama playing in the Sweet 16. To your point,
and then I have them losing at the hands of the Blue Devils.
It's funny, man. I have complete chalk in my Elite Eight. Yeah, I just looked to confirm now, but yeah, I have 1 and 2, 1 and 2s across the board. Now you get to my Final Four. It's not as chalky. 3 of 4 1 seeds.
Yeah, I'm all for it. So yeah, I think that's a good point. We're almost an hour in. We can't keep this on.
Can I give you my like the matchups I need just really quick, just to see your perspective on them? The number 4. I did go with Kentucky and Tennessee, and the reason I went with them, bro, is because it is in such a shitty part of the bracket. It should be a good game, quite honestly, when you look at Kentucky and Tennessee. Kentucky getting some guys back for the tournament. The next few are all teams that feature 2 teams that I have in the national championship.
Okay.
I had Duke versus Alabama. I do think Alabama's high-powered offense against Duke's defense.
If my prediction's wrong,
it's a great matchup.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's an awesome matchup.
So I did have that one up there. Like, can Duke, stop Alabama's offense? I think they can, and I think they'll do it very handedly. But it would still be an interesting matchup nonetheless. If Alabama gets over 80, what's that game look like?
Yeah.
The next one, man, and I guess you could pick any game from this region of the bracket, but Florida and St. John's, man. I believe this would be in the Elite 8. Is that right? Yeah. That game, bro. I have the Johnnies going to the national championship against Duke.
I like it.
RJ Lewis, man, he is a dog. He can do it all. He's even started hitting the 3-ball very at an efficient rate throughout the conference tournament, which makes me think they might be getting hot at the right time. I look at this matchup though, man, and if there's one team I do think could take Florida out before Duke, it would be the Johnnies, man. Just the balance, right? You have the bigs. You have the bigs. I can't think of his name right now. The dude with the dreads. He hit the game winner early on in the tournament. Can't pronounce his name nonetheless. But they have some guys there with them. And then obviously Florida just showed out in the SEC tournament.
They're so tough,
to your point earlier, you have them as a favorite in your bracket, man, and rightfully so. This was more just a credit to St. John's by having them beat Florida in my bracket. Rather than a diss to Florida.
You can make – this is why this bracket is so tough. I want you to take a peek at the round of 32. Now, I think we're pretty similar in who we have winning most of these games in the West to start. Look at what Saturday look at what Saturday and Sunday could look like in this bracket.
Yeah, Florida
UConn versus Danny Hurley.
Yeah.
Calipari yourself against Patino and St. John's. Memphis potentially and Maryland, who we like.
Yeah.
And I'll take it a step further. Sweet 16. Obviously, you have St. John's advancing, so do I. Texas Tech versus St. John's.
Yeah, it was a candidate. I had it up there. It's a game.
Florida versus Maryland is an awesome fucking match. Like that bracket is nuts.
Yeah, no, I do tend to agree with you. And then the ultimate matchup is my national championship. That's what I want to see. I want to see Duke versus St. John's. And the reason along with that, obviously it being the Natty and obviously it having Duke in it, at that point, to your point that you just brought up, if the St. John's Reds is it the Red Storm? Is that what they're called?
Red Storm, yes sir.
Yeah, the St. John's Red Storm. I'm rolling with the Johnnies there, but they would have beaten Texas Tech, Florida, and Auburn. That's just 3 of the teams they would have beaten, right?
Yeah.
In order to get to that point to play Duke, and I think that speaks for itself in the caliber of opponent.
Holy dude, what a road that is!
What a road! It seems impossible, quite honestly.
And I know there are 2, but then that's what I'm talking about when you look across from them. Then you're talking about if you're Tennessee, you're talking about having to beat a 15 seed UCLA or Utah State.
Yeah,
maybe it's Illinois, Xavier, Kentucky, and then you run into Houston, who I have ultimately winning. But
that's crazy.
That would be their road from their bottom of the bracket. Those two roads don't even come close to being equal or parallel. That is nuts. I love the St. John's pick. I do have Florida coming out of the bracket. I have Florida coming out that side of the bracket as a whole and beating Auburn in the Final Four. You have 3 1s and a 2. I have 4 1s, and I doubt it's going to play out that way. But
to be clear,
it probably makes for the best weekend of the. You know what I mean?
I agree, and I would take Florida over Auburn. Just to be clear, I'm taking the Johnnies over Florida. I'm taking the Johnnies over Auburn, but I would take Florida over Auburn if they do beat St. John's.
Yeah.
So
I do. I do agree with you. I have Duke winning the national championship. It's very Cooper Flag dependent, obviously. They'll make an Elite 8 run without him. They'll win the national championship with him. That's what I believe. If I had to pick a team outside of Duke, like let's say Cooper isn't 100% or, God forbid something happens to the sprained ankle and he can't really go, Florida is my next team up. Like I have them above Auburn. I have them above Houston, St. John's. The size down low and the guard play. They play 3 guards that shoot the shit out of the ball. They have multiple 7-footers.
Clayton? Is that his name? Clayton?
Yeah, Walter
he's a
Clayton.
monster. He's a monster.
They're so good, dude. And like you said, what they did in that tournament was fucking impressive.
They're deep.
Yeah.
They are the numbers speak for themselves. They are the team alongside of Duke. I think you pointed this out last week, but they're the team that is also top 10 in defense and offense. They're the only other team aside from Duke that is top in both. Yeah, but Duke is number 4.
Duke is let's call it I know Auburn is the number 1 overall seed. I know there's some injury concerns. Duke is literally an historically great Ken Pom team this year. Like they're the best Ken Palm ranked team in metric wise, analytic wise, all time.
Yeah.
They're very, very, very solid defensively. They protect the rim. And to me, man, from what I've seen this year with with them as my national champions, you can't dictate pace against them. Like, I haven't seen Duke play out of character, if that makes sense. I haven't seen a team speed up Duke or slow down Duke the way they want to or need to gain an advantage. Duke constantly controls the tempo. They control what they want to do when they want to do it. They'll beat you in multiple different ways. They'll score over 100 or they'll score 67. It doesn't matter. They're the best player in the country. I guess Janai Broom. It's #1 overall pick in the NBA draft coming up. Who I think is like bought in, right? Like, this isn't the past, right? This isn't like I'm not gonna question Kyrie Irving's want to his freshman year at Duke when he missed all that time, and then he missed all that time, whatever. But this isn't former #1 overall picks that have their eye. This team feels like they have a goal of winning the national championship.
Yeah, he's all in. Like. He wanted to play in the conference tourney.
Like, he is a kid, right? Like, he's not a guy like he. And I don't know him. I'm just going off of what, like, I see him on TV. I see his energy.
There's a maturity that comes with his game in the way that he plays, the non-wanting to be the leading scorer every game, right? Like, the ability to pass the ball and make the right passes and not be selfish about it.
Yeah, I watched him and the other who's the starting center?
For Duke?
Yeah.
Common Malawach?
Yeah. I watched him. They were on the bench. They were blowing someone out probably like a week and a half ago. And like a kid that never plays, whether he was a senior. Yeah. Jacks up a 3 and hits it, and they're going nuts on the bench.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think they're bought in. I think Proctor is taking on a role. Evans can knock down 9 threes if he needs to. Con Knipple's a dog.
Could be. That's the thing with Duke, man. Con on any given night can be the best player on the court over Cooper Flagg. I think that's something that people haven't really gotten to see. It's kind of like the year Zion was at Duke and nobody really got to see RJ Barrett and the way that he played on that team. Kind of you get overshadowed a bit, but Con Knipple in other years, bro, he might be the #1 pick with the way he plays. Like, I don't know. You know how I feel about that top pick with the Sixers this upcoming year. If we can get that,
it's just
I would not be mad if we took a guy like Con. It's not even just
the name, because that is an all-time name, Con Knipple. But you look at him, right? Does he translate to the NBA?
It's fun. It's a good question. It's a good question. I do think he does, though. I think he does because he's strong. He is 6'7", which is like kind of slept on as well.
And I think but I think that's part of the problem. I think when you're between 2 7-footers that start with you, that protect the rim, he doesn't look 6'7" to me. He looks like semi out of shape, chubbier white dude, nerdy white dude. And I go, is this dude really going to be like a lottery pick? And his name's Con Knipple.
Con Knipple
and
from
then you
Wisconsin.
watch what he does without Cooper Flagg on the floor, and it's like, oh, wow, yeah, no, you're right. He's huge, and he can shoot the 3, and he can get downhill. And, it's...
he's 6'7", 217. They have him listed as a guard. He handles the ball like a guard, so it makes sense.
And then you have a Mason Gillis who's been to a Final Four last year with another team that comes off and can knock down big shots for you. They're loaded, dude. They protect the rim. They can, like I said.
And mind you, the shortest person on the team is what? 5'8", Spencer Hubbard. But then the next shortest person is 6'5", Caleb Foster.
Nice.
So Tyrese Proctor 6'6".
Well, so that's enough. They are the tallest team in America.
Our point guard, Sion James, is 6'6".
Yeah.
How much does this dude weigh? 220. He's built like a fucking linebacker. I don't know if you've seen that
Here's
guy.
the problem, and there's under 30 of you in here right now. I know the numbers aren't booming on this Monday show. We're just breaking down the bracket a bit, but we are doing a tournament challenge. I'll get the link out there. It's under DSM-Media. $10. You can either Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal, Scotty, or myself to be entered when you do put in your bracket. So let us know if you want to be involved. But me, you, D-Rap. Evidently, all three of us are going the Blue Devils to win it, which isn't a great look. Isn't great for us, right? Like maybe this is an Eagles situation. Maybe they are just that good. They are the team, and you can try to get cute with it, and you can try to say, oh, it's Auburn, or it's this, or it's that, or no, they're just going to be that dominant and show you why game after game.
The problem in the SEC, they have a ton of great teams. It's just hard to identify one. I think the one that everybody's gravitated towards is Auburn with Janai Broom, but Florida's right there. Bama's there. There's so many teams in that conference that it's hard to like pick one that everybody's going to agree on that's going to win the national championship, whereas Duke is probably the favorite non-SEC team. It's just as simple.
Can I ask you? Let me ask
St. John's should be up there, but
let me ask you this: So you and me both just listed 3 1 seeds. We talked about a couple 2 seeds, and I do have them getting to the Final Four, so I'm not disrespecting them. But the one team that we're not discussing as maybe legit options is the last 1 seed, and that's Houston.
Yeah.
Are we wrong for that? They're fucking good, dude. Like, we know what they do defensively. And again, styles make that's a problem in this tournament. But the one thing they do differently this year than in years past is they shoot the 3 ball really, really well, dude. And they have dudes that can score off the dribble. Cryer, Gross. That dude Sharp is big and wide and shoots it from 40. Like, Juwan Roberts hasn't even been playing lately. Like, they are very, very, very good. And it's like they don't get discussed in the same conversation as Auburn, as Duke, as Florida. Is it just history as well? Like, they're another.
I'm sure that's part of it. I just, like, when I look at my bracket, one, they're going through the Midwest, which we've discussed how shitty that part of the bracket looks. But also along with that, man, they're just running into Duke in the Final Four. You know, like, that's where they end up in my bracket. So it's not that I'm sleeping on them. I just have them losing to my national champion.
That's true. That may as well.
At the end of the day, you know. So I don't know. I don't think we're sleeping on them in any sense. I think if they were on the other side of the bracket, for example, I may have a discussion about Auburn versus Houston, or even St. John's versus Houston. When you look at the guard play defensively that Houston presents, that would match up really well with a team like St. John's, quite honestly. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I would give them credit in a different part of the bracket, maybe. That's true. I don't know. It's
but the funniest part is they've probably lucked out, right? Like, as the 1 seed that's not getting discussed as much, they probably have the easiest path.
Yeah.
Outside of,
outside of Duke?
Well, no, I was going to say outside of what could potentially be their second game, which would be Gonzaga. Because I think that could be very interesting potentially.
Yeah.
But then I'm assuming you get past the first weekend. Whether you're playing Clemson or McNeese or Purdue or whatever comes out. I mean, come on, you're cakewalking through that, right? Yeah. And then you get Kentucky or Tennessee or UCLA at the bottom. Come on. You know what I mean? So I think they're not being recognized maybe like the others, but they probably have the easiest path to a Final Four out of the 1 seeds. Florida's got it fucking tough, dude. Florida and St. John's, man, that is nuts.
Yeah. That's why I don't know. Yeah, that's going to be a tough matchup, whoever comes out of that, you know, because there's a certain point you reach in the tournament where it's not like it's going to get harder than like playing Texas Tech. Like, Florida could be a better team than Texas Tech, but Texas Tech is an elite team.
Yeah.
So when you see Florida, it's like we've already played an elite team. Like,
JT Toppin's fucking gross, but all right, we're over an hour of the way in. we're not going to worry about Josh Uche and whoever
We'll
else the
talk
Birds have brought in. Yeah,
later
well, we
this
got
week.
Wednesday for that.
Yes,
Guys, do
sir.
yourself a favor. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to follow us across all social media platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share it with your friends, family, anyone else that you know might be interested. I'll drop the link in the comments here on YouTube. We'll put it out on TikTok, our Twitter page as well, to join the bracket challenge with us. So
Yes, sir.
for myself, for Scotty, for DSM, best week of the year. We'll talk to you guys on Wednesday.
Let's
Peace out.
go. Peace, everybody. Go do